The morning in Scarsdale was wrapped in its usual tranquility. The maple leaves had begun to turn golden, and the crisp air heralded the arrival of autumn. Along Fox Meadow Road, lined with white colonial-style homes, residents could be seen enjoying their early morning jogs. From our home's red brick fireplace wafted the warm scent of burning wood. "Emily, breakfast is ready." I was putting the finishing touches at the marble kitchen counter. From the Le Creuset pot rose the fragrant aroma of organic oatmeal. I garnished it with fresh blueberries from Whole Foods and drizzled a bit of maple syrup on top. Outside the window, the autumn garden, tenderly nurtured by our gardener Michael, glistened with morning dew. "Coming!" Emily's voice called back from the living room. The Chopin piece flowing from the grand piano stopped, and tiny footsteps approached. The morning sun streaming through the French doors gently illuminated Emily's chestnut hair. "How did your morning practice go?" "Great. I played it just like my teacher showed me. The piece for next week's recital is perfect." Emily sat at the kitchen island with a beaming smile. At her white dress's collar sparkled the Tiffany necklace Robert and I had given her for her recent birthday. Beside her, my husband Robert was going through the morning news on his iPad, holding his weekday ritual Starbucks coffee. "Jennifer, about this weekend's brunch." "Yes, I've already made the reservation. Our usual private room at table. I invited the Greenbergs from next door too." As expected, Robert smiled. "Emily, how about your swimming lesson?" "It's off today, Dad. I have reading club at the library instead." How precious these ordinary morning scenes were. I realized this deeply just 1 month ago. The sudden death of my father-in-law William had dealt our family a tremendous shock. In particular, my sister-in-law Barbara's behavior was clearly unusual. From the moment she heard of her father's death, she became like a different person. The day of the funeral, acquaintances of the Peterson family arrived one after another at the chapel in Greenwood Cemetery. Barbara stood rigid like a doll behind her black veil. As the choir's hymns echoed, she just kept staring into empty space. Barbara stood guard-like by the antique collection displayed in the reception room. Ming Dynasty vases, Tiffany stained glass, Renaissance oil paintings, numerous masterpieces her father had collected throughout his life. Even when I suggested, "Why don't you sit down and rest?" Barbara would only shake her head. Her eyes remained fixed on the antiques. Then came the discussion of inheritance distribution. The family gathered in the study lined with heavy furniture. "Only those who live in this house should have inheritance rights to this collection." Barbara's voice trembled. "I'm the one who best understands Father's aesthetic sense. As a curator." But Father's will was clear. The collection's heir would be Robert. This choice to entrust it to the investment banker's son rather than Barbara, with her experience as a museum curator, deeply upset her. As the legal advisor read the will, Barbara's expression gradually hardened. In the end, she left the room without saying a word. Something ominous seemed to lurk in her departing figure. Several weeks passed. On the surface, daily life seemed to return to normal. But something was wrong with Emily. Our daughter, who used to happily share memories of her grandfather, began avoiding topics about the family home. Emily tugged at my sleeve with an anxious expression. This happened right after returning home from her after-school piano lesson. "I'm scared of Aunt Barbara." At the time, I couldn't understand the meaning of those words. I was only worried about Barbara, who had become reclusive in the family home. One afternoon at 3 o'clock, I parked my Mercedes SUV in front of Scarsdale Elementary School. The autumn sunlight reflected off the school windows with dazzling brightness. As the bell announcing the end of classes rang, children began streaming out. Emily was among the last to emerge. Usually, she would come out smiling and chatting with friends, but today she was alone, wearing a contemplative expression. The navy ribbon holding her hair swayed in the autumn breeze. When I waved, my daughter slowly walked toward me. There seemed to be some hesitation in her steps. "What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" Emily shook her head. Opening the passenger door, she mumbled, "Something feels strange today." "Strange how?" "Well, I can't explain it. Like the air feels heavy." Fastening her seatbelt, Emily stared out the window. Her profile looked far too thoughtful for an 8-year-old. Shortly after starting the car, Emily suddenly leaned forward. "Mom, that car." As we turned onto Fox Meadow Road, we passed a brown delivery van. It was from a familiar shipping company. The driver wore a cap pulled low over their eyes and passed us without a glance. "Must be a delivery." "But..." Emily started to say something, then fell silent. When we got home, my premonition proved correct. There was an unfamiliar box in the delivery box. A brown cardboard box. About 30 centimeters square and 20 centimeters high. The surface looked slightly aged. The sender field was blank, and the recipient simply printed as "unknown." No address or phone number was listed. A slight strange odor emanated from the corner of the box. What a strange box. The moment I reached for it, Emily's scream pierced the air. "Mom, no. Don't open it." Emily clung to my arm. Her small body was trembling. Tears welled in her eyes, and her face had turned pale. "Emily. Please, don't open it, there's something bad inside." My daughter's voice shook. I had never seen the usually quiet Emily so distraught. "What do you mean?" "I don't know, but I'm so scared. From that box, dark feelings." Emily clung to me, not taking her eyes off the box. In her eyes floated a fear unbefitting an 8-year-old. The spiritual sensitivity inherited from her grandmother. We tried to avoid mentioning Emily's special ability even within the family. To avoid being teased at school, Emily herself pretended not to notice it. But Emily's current reaction was clearly not ordinary. "I understand. I won't touch it." I took out my phone and called Robert. After 3 rings, I heard my husband's voice. "Jennifer. What's wrong?" "Robert, there's a strange box in our delivery box. No sender information. After I briefly explained the situation, Robert's tone changed. "Don't touch it. I'm coming home right now." "But what about work?" "That doesn't matter now. Get Emily inside the house and stay away from the box. Move it to the garage storage immediately. Understand?" There was an urgency in Robert's voice that I'd never heard before. "Understood." After hanging up, I took Emily's hand. "Let's go inside. How about some hot chocolate?" Emily nodded silently. She was still trembling, but seemed to be gradually calming down. Before entering the house, I surveyed the neighborhood. It was a quiet afternoon as usual. Mrs. Greenberg was tending to her garden next door. Cars passed on the street as normal. Yet somehow, I felt a chill run down my spine. After moving the box to the garage storage, I stood watching out the living room window. Golden maple leaves swayed in the wind, presenting a peaceful autumn afternoon scene. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that an invisible, ominous shadow had crept into this tranquil landscape. Emily sat on the sofa, holding her warm hot chocolate with both hands. Her profile still showed traces of tension. Occasionally glancing toward the storage room, I pondered. Emily's spiritual sensitivity. Barbara's behavior. And this suspicious box. Could these be connected? Just then, the doorbell rang, and Mrs. Greenberg from next door came to visit. In her hands was a freshly baked apple pie. "Jennifer, I saw a delivery truck come by. Did something arrive?" Those words sent a chill down my spine. Mrs. Greenberg had lived on Fox Meadow Road for over 30 years, a pillar of the community. I had long known about her keen powers of observation. As I gave an evasive answer, Emily tensed up beside me. The hot chocolate on the side table trembled with her small shaking hands. At that moment, we heard the roar of a Mercedes-AMG G63. Robert had returned. He had made it back surprisingly quickly from Manhattan, a journey that usually takes 45 minutes. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Greenberg. My husband has just returned." Before I could finish speaking, Robert rushed through the entrance. His usually crisp Brooks Brothers suit was disheveled today. "Have you called the police?" Robert asked, catching his breath. His expression lacked its usual calmness. Mrs. Greenberg, seeming to sense the situation, quietly took her leave. However, I didn't miss her glance toward the storage room. Not yet. I was focused on calming Emily. "Let's call them right away." Robert took out his phone. I could see his hand trembling slightly. It was the first time I'd seen my husband, who never flinched during tough investment banking negotiations, so agitated. Just 15 minutes after calling the police, 2 patrol cars and a black SWAT van arrived without sirens. Likely mindful of the neighbors' curious eyes. "Mrs. Peterson. I'm Detective Johnson from the Bomb Disposal Unit." Among the uniformed officers appeared a man in a suit. He seemed to be in his mid-50s. Under his mild expression gleamed sharp eyes. "Could you please explain the situation in detail?" We explained the circumstances to the detective who was shown to our living room. Without mentioning Emily's spiritual sensitivity, we simply said our daughter had shown strong anxiety. A wise decision. Detective Johnson nodded. We'll first conduct an X-ray scan of the suspicious package. Depending on the results, further testing may be necessary. Specialists began bringing in equipment one after another. Police tape had already been set up in front of the storage room. Neighbors were gradually gathering. What about evacuation? When I asked, the detective carefully chose his words. As a precaution, we're asking residents within a 100-meter radius to evacuate. We've already contacted Mrs. Greenberg. At those words, Emily's body began trembling again. I hugged my daughter. The trembling transmitted from her small body further heightened my own anxiety. 30 minutes passed after the X-ray examination began. The technician's expressions gradually hardened. Detective Johnson contacted headquarters several times, furrowing his brow each time. Then came the decisive moment. Mr. and Mrs. Peterson. Clear tension lingered in the detective's voice. We've confirmed an improvised explosive device inside the box. The air in the room froze. Robert gripped my shoulder tightly. Emily desperately suppressed what seemed like an approaching scream. It has a time-detonated trigger mechanism. Industrial explosives are used, likely assembled by an amateur. However, the detective paused. It has sufficient lethal capacity. If it had exploded indoors. Those words forcibly sparked our imagination. Without Emily's warning, I might have opened that box without any suspicion. We'll immediately remove it in our special disposal vehicle. Please wait in a location as far away as possible during this time. Following the detective's instructions, we were to evacuate to the Greenbergs' guest house. On the way, the police photography team was taking pictures of the suspicious box. The word "unknown" in the address field. The blank sender field. And the faint traces of fingerprints left on the box's surface. What about the security camera footage? Robert asked. We have high-performance surveillance cameras installed at our house. We've already begun analyzing it. The detective's response offered new hope. But that hope was shattered by his next words. The delivery driver was clearly in disguise. Black coat and hat, judging from the height and build, likely a woman. At those words, Robert and I exchanged glances. One image surfaced in our minds, Barbara standing before the antiques in the reception room, dressed in black. We'll begin taking statements now. Do you have any suspects in mind within your family? At the detective's sharp gaze, we were at a loss for words. Emily shrank further into my arms. At that moment, the bomb disposal unit's van started its siren. An ominous sound echoed through the residential area at dusk. Maple leaves swayed in the wind as the orange sunset cast eerie shadows. From the Greenbergs' window, I stared at our home. We spent that night at the Greenbergs'. We couldn't yet return to our house where police investigation continued. Emily had fallen asleep, exhausted, in the guest room bed. Any suspects in mind? Detective Johnson's question still echoed in my head. In the Greenbergs' living room, Robert and I sat facing each other. We need to talk about Barbara. Robert opened his mouth heavily. Deep sadness seeped through his voice. The reality of having to name his own sister as a suspect. But we don't have proof. I desperately wanted to deny it. However, circumstantial evidence was piling up. Her abnormal attachment to the antique collection. The conflict over inheritance. And Emily's anxious behavior. The phone rang right after that. Mr. Peterson. Detective Johnson's voice came through the receiver. We found interesting information in Barbara Peterson's purchase history. We held our breath at the detective's words. Over the past 2 weeks, there are records of industrial chemical purchases. Waterproof spray from a home improvement store, wiring from an electronics shop, and most notably, explosive material components ordered online. No way. Robert's face turned pale. The security camera footage analysis is complete. The delivery driver's build, way of walking, they match Barbara. The police headed to the family home. We were asked to accompany them. As a precaution, we left Emily with Mrs. Greenberg. When we arrived at the house, several patrol cars were already waiting. In the garden lit by street lamps, shadows of the roses our father had carefully tended swayed. There was no response to the intercom. The moment the special unit broke down the entrance, we heard a noise from the second-floor study. Officers rushed up the stairs. We followed behind them. The study door opened. There sat Barbara, surrounded by father's collection. Wearing a black dress, she stared at us with vacant eyes, just like on the day of the funeral. "Sister, why?" Robert's voice trembled. Barbara slowly stood up. In her hand, she held a Ming Dynasty vase. Father's most treasured piece. "This collection belongs to me." Barbara's voice was strangely calm. "All my memories with father are in these pieces. The treasures we found one by one, visiting antique markets on holidays, the value of beauty that father taught me, to have it taken away by you people. We're not trying to take it away." Robert stepped forward. "We can protect it together. Father's will, together." "Lies." Barbara's scream echoed through the midnight study. "What do you know? How could someone who only looks at numbers in an investment bank understand this beauty?" She clutched the vase to her chest. "And that woman?" Barbara's eyes filled with hatred as she pointed at me. "How could a woman who peddles luxury real estate and lives a superficial life ever understand father's aesthetic sense?" Detective Johnson spoke quietly. "You planted the bomb, didn't you?" A moment of silence. Then, all the truth began pouring from Barbara's lips. How she researched bomb making online. How she purchased materials little by little from different stores. How she bought a delivery company uniform from an online auction. And how she decided to take revenge on her brother and his wife. The collection belongs only to those who live in this house. I've spent all this time here with father, yet to have it given to outsiders who know nothing. Barbara's monologue gradually became more incoherent. "Sister, didn't you think about Emily?" Robert's voice was filled with sadness. "An 8-year-old girl." At those words, Barbara's expression wavered for a moment. But soon, the mask of hatred returned. "That child too will eventually become like Jennifer, just superficial, materialistic." Officers quietly approached Barbara. "Barbara Peterson, you're under arrest for attempted murder." The sound of handcuffs echoed in the study. Barbara handed the vase to an officer without resistance. At that moment, a single tear rolled down her cheek. Her confession in the interrogation room lasted 5 hours. Under the presence of a psychiatrist, the darkness in Barbara's heart was gradually revealed. After her father's death, she rapidly lost her mental balance. Her experience and knowledge as a museum curator had, ironically, backed her into a corner. Her obsession with the collection became increasingly pathological, causing her to lose touch with reality. The psychiatric evaluation resulted in diagnoses of obsessive-compulsive disorder and social anxiety disorder. However, given the methodical nature of her crime, she was deemed mentally competent to stand trial. As dawn approached, we returned home. Emily was still sleeping at the Greenbergs. Through the living room window, the eastern sky was gradually brightening. "Jennifer," Robert called out in an exhausted voice. About Emily's spiritual sensitivity, it really saved us this time. I nodded silently. Our daughter's special ability. While it might sometimes be a burden, this time it had certainly saved our lives. But Barbara. Yes. I held Robert's hand. The real challenge begins now. 2 years later. We had moved to a place a little away from Fox Meadow Road. Our new house might be smaller than before, but it has a bright kitchen filled with warm sunlight and a garden swing that Emily loves. "Mom, look." On a Saturday morning, Emily came running into the kitchen with the mail. Now 10 years old, our daughter had become brighter than before. While she still continues her weekend piano lessons, she seems to enjoy her newly started ballet classes even more. It's from Aunt Barbara. A light blue envelope. The sender's address reads, Maplewood Mental Care Center. Opening the letter, Barbara's neat handwriting jumps out at me. To my beloved family. The autumn colors outside are beautiful. The view from the facility window reminds me of the Japanese gardens that Father loved. My treatment is going well. In group therapy, I've met people with similar experiences. Everyone has struggled with losing something precious. But by accepting that pain, we're learning to move forward little by little. Robert, Jennifer, and Emily. That day, I tried to do something unforgivable. Even now, my chest tightens when I think about it. But my therapist says that while we can't change the past, we can change the future. About Father's collection, I have a proposal. How about donating it to the Metropolitan Museum of Art? As the William Peterson Collection, it could share the wonder of beauty with many people. I think that's what Father would have wanted. Don't rush to reply. Take time to discuss it as a family. Oh yes, I heard about Emily. Good luck with your ballet recital. With love, Barbara. After reading the letter, a quiet atmosphere filled the living room. Robert looked up from his newspaper, gazing at me. What do you think? I think it's a wonderful idea. I answered without hesitation. We can share Father's collection with more people. Emily, tying her ballet shoes in the corner of the sofa, suddenly said. Aunt Barbara's heart seems to be clearing up. At those words, Robert and I exchanged glances. Our daughter's special sensitivity was still present. But there was no longer any anxiety or fear like before. Several weeks later, we visited the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The words, William Peterson Collection, shone in the special exhibition room. The Ming Dynasty vase, Tiffany-stained glass, Renaissance oil paintings, they all radiated even more brilliantly under the new lighting. Father would be happy about this. Robert whispered in a corner of the exhibition room. His profile was wrapped in peaceful satisfaction. Visitors were absorbed in each piece. A young curator was giving an enthusiastic explanation. Their expression reminded me of Barbara from the past. That pure passion for beauty. It had never truly been lost. On our way home, Emily, holding my hand, said, "Hey, Mom. Can we go visit Aunt Barbara soon?" I pondered that question for a moment. The wounds haven't completely healed yet. But perhaps it's time to open a new door. Yes, let's do that. This Sunday, we'll bring some flowers. The evening cityscape was turning orange. A beautiful rainbow arched in the direction of the Maplewood Mental Care Center. That night, as we gathered around the dinner table, I was thinking. Life sometimes brings unreasonable trials. But beyond them, new light always finds its way in. Emily's piano music once again echoes throughout the house. Its tone has grown deeper than before. Through knowing sadness, people become stronger. And they can become more gentle. The aroma of Mrs. Greenberg's freshly baked apple pie wafts through the kitchen. Outside the window, the newly planted young maple tree sways in the gentle breeze.